We got a lot going on with this election. We got these mail-in ballots that everybody's going crazy about. We've got coronavirus. Can't nobody get to the polls. We've got a president who says, if I don't win, I ain't leaving. And I am telling you, I'm not going. So what happens, Deontay, if President Trump loses this election? How do you feel about your man?
Well, so I am very confident that that will not be happening, just based upon what we've seen, and we've been here in 2016, and they were so focused on President Trump not conceding and not accepting the results, and
this is true.
We saw who really still hasn't accepted the results was Hillary Clinton, and so I'm not worried about President Trump if that does happen. I'm not worried about him not accepting the results and not.
Look, I'm on your side. I have just as much confidence as you do. However, I am interested in how would you feel if he were to lose and not accept that loss?
Well, if the president, he said he will. If the president, loses and he doesn't, now, I mean, listen,
he has refused to commit to leaving.
I am someone who holds all people accountable, and so I will hold him accountable for that. And but I trust the president that he will. That if he loses the election, that he will gracefully bowed, and life will go on for him, and life will go on for the country, and the country.
Life will definitely go on for him. He owns the Supreme Court, or he will by then. There probably won't be another reason for him to stay in office, to be honest. He can just, as Jesse Jackson told me, he can just live in the shade under the trees that he's planted after that happens. So what would happen if the election results were disputed, Jeff?
Yeah, this is going to be interesting because this is not going to be a landslide either way. This election will be contested. I'm calling it right now. No matter who wins, no matter who loses, it will be contested. If Trump loses, on the right, we're going to pretend like it was voter fraud, massive voter fraud. If Biden loses, we're going to pretend it was voter suppression. And what's going to be tough about this is that in either scenario, there's probably not going to be enough evidence to prove that claim. So either way, we are going to have a president by Inauguration Day because federal law and the Constitution requires it. But this is going to be a mess. This will not be decided on Election Day. And if there isn't enough evidence for what either party claims, I'm going to come down on either of them, whether it's Trump or Biden.
Well, it's interesting when you say this is not going to, it's not going to be decided on Election Day. It's impossible for it to be decided on Election Day because of the mail-in ballots. Is that right, Dominique?
No.
Yeah, it's right. Thank you partly to the fact that, Trump has hobbled the post office and, appointed one of his donors with no experience to run the place. And he has admitted to slowing down the mail. Now, here's the thing. You can say it's true, there's voter suppression, and it's true, they're going to claim that there's fraud. And I agree that probably it won't be decided right away and it will be contested. The only problem with your argument is that, in fact, there is a lot of evidence of voter suppression, starting with what's happening with the post office, continuing with the president, with no evidence saying that mail-in voting is riddled with fraud. There's no data to support that. He's just saying it. He's hedging his bets so that if he loses, he can say, where, I got cheated. That is voter suppression in itself, just by the president of the United States, the so-called leader of the free world, saying there's a problem with mail-in voting or making up a lie that there's a difference between absentee voting and vote by mail. The suppression has already started. And so there would be a strong argument. I hope it's a landslide, but I hate to say it. I agree with you, Jeff. I think it is going to be contested.
How is it okay that President Trump has suggested that people vote twice and no one says anything about that part?
Yeah, I don't think most people anymore are taking. Yeah, it's been so much. It's just the latest statement by him. There's so many things that you could have brought him up on charges, whether he's the president or not. But on the point on the election, I think one aspect of it is this is a country that wants gratification now, and so we're going to get to Election Day. We're going to be expected to name a president that night, and I think what you're hearing here is that all of us should sort of temper that expectation. that it's not going to be that night, that we're probably going to have to wait for the 17 days and for all the ballots to come in. I do think this is actually going to be a landslide election. And after looking at the early results on a few states on the East Coast, if North Carolina looks to go for Biden, at that point, I think you're going to start to say that there's almost no way that Trump can win this.
Listen, Ed, I can't believe you're shocking me tonight. I can't believe that you even care about these polls when they were tragically wrong in 2016. I don't even know why we look at polls anymore. I don't even know why we believe CNN anymore, because they were drastically wrong. And all of it
was wrong, not just CNN.
And polling as a science is for, especially on electoral, is way off now. I think the prevalence of cell phones, and no one really talks about how many now cell phones there are. So you're not getting a real cross section of the country with regards to polling. And to your point, in 2016, but the real issue in 2016 was the October surprise. I mean, it was the FBI announcement 10 days out or 4 or 5 days out, whatever the timeline was, that drastically shifted the impressions, and that played out in the polling. You could see the public opinion change.
Look, we can talk all day and all night about the things that interfered and ultimately caused Hillary Clinton's demise. There were several things that happened. There was James Comey. There was the Russians. There were a lot of things that happened. And I have to say, I could give a shit less about it, because if you want to win, you got to kick ass. You got to go in and you got to kick ass. If you want to if you want to beat Mike Tyson, it will never be by unanimous decision. You have to knock him out. And so I think for this election, if you want to beat Trump, like you said, Ed, it has to be a landslide, because if there is any discrepancy in any of these voting, in any of these voting ballots, if there is any doubt, first of all, Trump will own the Supreme Court. So if you think it's going to go another way, you better think again. He also
not only the Supreme Court, but you got to remember, while Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats were going through impeachment, President Trump was stacking the courts all over this country as well. But also, we have
198 judges.
Yes, exactly. And we also have to think about this as well. And I will let you know that the Trump campaign currently has about 9 to 10 possible pathways to victory. And some of those pathways actually includes losing North Carolina, and one actually includes Florida. And so, but there's different pathways when it comes to what's happening now. As for the election results being given the day of, Pennsylvania made sure that was not going to happen with their Supreme Court, making sure that they're going to accept mail-in ballots a couple of days after. So, this is all in the plan of the Democratic Party to make sure that it gets drawn out, because hey, why not?
That's amazing that you would say that, considering that Trump is the one that's slowing down the mail, literally.
Well, the Democrats just
literally go to the polls and risk their lives. And I have to say another thing here. We said, Trump owns the Supreme Court. He's had all these victories. He doesn't even need to win, except for that in order to stay out of jail, he may need to win. He's got multiple investigations going against him. And there's another thing he's doing while he's in office, which is enriching himself and his family as he profits off foreign dignitaries and the U.S. government, paying to stay in his hotels and giving Ivanka special, licenses for China, and all the ways that they are raiding the U.S. Treasury. Those things will not continue if he's no longer president, no matter who's on the Supreme Court.
And to the point about the judges, I think where this really plays out, and to kind of bring this full circle back to Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the Shelby case, and looking at the Civil Rights Act and voting rights in the South. When you look at what happened in Georgia with the Secretary of State there, the way he maneuvered the voting and the polling places in such a way that African Americans in rural areas had to drive, upwards of 50 miles to get to a polling place, something like that, something crazy. You only see this restriction of the vote on one side of the ledger. I've never seen a Democrat restrict people from coming to the polls, and it's one of those sacrosanct American rights, is the right to vote. But consistently, the Republican Party continues to try to keep people from voting, exercising a very simple, basic right.
Let me ask you this question. So I was at the Supreme Court tonight, and there was over thousands of people. I was on the steps. There was thousands of strangers sitting next to each other. So are we really going to have this topic about safety at the polls when we see all of these crowds at the Supreme Court, when we saw the March on Washington, all of these crowds and on the March on Washington? Like, listen, I support the March on Washington. I support people going out there for Ruth Bader Ginsburg. But this is my question: is this? If people can go to Walmart, if people can go wherever they want to go, you mean to tell me they can't go to the polls? They can't go and vote early?
You shut down polls in the county so that people have to go long distances to vote.
And you didn't see elderly people with underlying conditions were not at the March on Washington. They were
elderly people always most likely vote early or absentee anyway.
Maybe they do, maybe they don't. We need to make sure that they can, and they can vote however they see fit, whether that's vote by mail or at the polls with plenty of early voting time.
So should I take this ballot that came to my house
look like us from voting
and fill it out and vote?
Stop trying to keep Black and brown people from voting. Stop it.
Again, Deontay?
It's un-American.
Say that again, Deontay?
What should I do with this ballot that was mailed to my? I live in Pentagon City area, Virginia. What should I do with the ballot that was mailed to me?
You have options.
Can I pull that out and turn it back in?
You have options. Why would you rather have
name on it and turn it
your
back
grandfather could read English or not? I mean, we're gonna pay a poll tax in order to cast the vote. You have options. Sign it, mail it in, go to the polls. There's options for you to exercise that right. You want some limitation on whether you wear Nikes or Adidas and whether you can vote? Should there be some qualifier as to who can vote?
Listen, the games are beginning. There's 45 days until the election, and the Democratic Party is going to pull out whatever bags of tricks they have up there.
Sure. We're going to pull out maps that show where and how people can't vote in which they reside. I mean, that's,
But the problem with that is that you're not going to be able to show that there is widespread voter suppression, that the election would have gone differently if more people would have been able to vote. The bottom line is, even with voter ID laws, that doesn't even impact Black turnout. It's already been shown that. Harvard Business Review showed that. So and even when we're talking about the Postal Service already said that they can handle the mail-in ballots. If every single voter voted by mail-in ballots, it would represent a fraction of what the USPS already does anyway. So
I'm actually going to be able to vote,
whether they show up, whether they mail in, whether it's absentee.
We'll take a quick break and we'll come right back on the Tammi Mac Late Show on Fox Soul.